Dragons have always been a big part of Yu-Gi-Oh! Even in the original anime, Seto Kaiba crumbled his opponents with his infamous Blue Eyes White Dragon. It wasn't until the release of Red Eyes Darkness Metal Dragon that we in the TCG could build a coherent dragon strategy. After playing the Chaos Dragon deck on FCG Duels, which you can check out in the description box down below, I started looking into Hopeless Dragons, which is essentially Norlera's Turbo with a dragon engine. But resolving a Norlera's effect didn't even increase your win rate by very much. Norlera's is just a brick. Instead, I decided to take inspiration from my Chaos Dragon deck and play it as a combo deck that aims to do explosive plays with Red Eyes Darkness Metal Dragon, utilizing Blue Eyes and White Stone to be able to play trade-in. Additionally, the hero package serves as more starter cards. If you like Phantom of Chaos, don't use it as a all-in combo strategy copying a Norlera's and sending away the entire field and hand, hoping that you draw better than your opponent. Play it as a toolbox engine. Phantom of Chaos has plenty of good targets, be it Red MD, Dark Arm Dragon, or Dark Creator, being all very good targets to banish off of its effect. I think the classic Hopeless Dragons belongs back in 2010. With a more modern look on the game, 15 years in the future, we can take the good from a bad deck and leave the rest to the history books. I suppose Hopeless isn't a very fitting name anymore. This is Destiny Dragons for Edison format. To start the profile off, I play 3 copies of Red Eyes Darkness Metal Dragon. This is the boss monster of the deck and a card you want to see, so it makes sense to play 3 copies. Then I play 3 copies of Red Eyes Wyvern. Again, this card comes up when you want to bring back the Red MD from the graveyard, so it makes sense to play 3 copies to have longevity. And the 1800 stat line is also not too bad. For the utility dragons, I play 1 copy of Quakimeru Drago. This card is really good against Blackwing and Vayu, seeing as they cannot special summon dark monsters. Also against various light decks like Fairies or Light Sworn, it's also very good at shutting them out as well. Just the 1 copy in the main deck, because it is searchable off of Future Fusion. While it's a fine card to normal summon, seeing as it has 1900 and can swing over a Shura or a Stratos, it also requires you to keep a dragon in your hand for it to stay alive. And it's not a starter card, it doesn't really advance your game state, it just stops your opponent from playing, so it's better to play 1 copy in the main deck. And if you want more copies post side to hedge against, for example, Royal Oppression or Deck Devastation Virus, you can side those in. Then I play 1 copy of Whitestone Legend and 1 copy of Blue Eyes White Dragon. Similar to my Chaos Dragon deck, I really like having the Blue Eyes and Whitestone to search off a Future Fusion. And having the level 1 Dragon Tuner also makes sense for Red MD, so you can bring back a tuner and make synchro plays that way. Additionally, as I also play 3 copies of Trade-In, I really like having the Blue Eyes in my deck so I can easily search a level 8 through my engine to get this card live. While Future Fusion is just a one-off, you do have Gold Sarcophagus to search it out from your deck, as well as plenty of draw cards to see it. So while it is technically a limited card, you do see it quite often, thus warranting to playing these kinds of cards to search off of it. And for the last Dragon type monster in the main deck, I play 1 copy of Dark Arm Dragon. So Dark Arm Dragon is really good because you play a lot of dark monsters in this deck. And it is also a dragon, which means you can send it off of Future Fusion and banish it with Phantom of Chaos to gain its effect. For the other monsters, I play 3 copies of Phantom of Chaos. So what I noticed in my Chaos Dragon deck was whenever I could resolve this card to banish a Red MD and summon a slew of dragon monsters from my hand or grave, I was able to quickly overwhelm my opponent. So I decided to look a bit more into Phantom of Chaos and its utility in Edison format. I came to the conclusion that Phantom of Chaos copying a Norlera's isn't actually very good. Yeah, you send away your opponent's entire field and hand, but you send away yours too. And the only way that you can really blossom of that, apart from drawing a singular card off of the Norlera's effect, is by having graveyard effects. So sure, if you get to have a Wyvern and a Red MD in your graveyard, or perhaps a Vayu and Sirocco in the Vayu Turbo Norlera's deck, you get something, but a 2300 beat stick isn't gonna win you the game. And even recurring back to Red MD doesn't necessarily mean you win the game either. I found the Norlera's to just be a brick. Banishing a card like the Dark Creator to bring back a Red MD was a much more efficient strategy. This way you're not throwing all your eggs in one basket, or all the cards in one graveyard, so to speak. But instead you focus on using this as a toolbox engine. So as we just talked about with Future Fusion, you can dump that to the graveyard. And you can banish this with Phantom of Chaos to copy its effect, banishing a dark monster like Red MD from your graveyard to pop their field. And then you can bring this back with the DDR. So instead of using Phantom of Chaos as solely a means to get Norlera's effect to go off, I decided to utilize Phantom of Chaos for its versatile effect. So some of the strong options you have just in the main deck is Red MD, which can bring back a Blue Eyes White Dragon, a White Stone to make synchro plays, a Drago to lock out your opponent, If you're able to dump a creator to the graveyard, you can use this to bring back the red MD from the graveyard for free. And now you have a red MD that they have to deal with, which summons a monster every single turn. You can use Destiny Hero Plasma, which is also a trade-in target that's searchable off of Stratos. And with Plasma, you can suck up their monster to deal with whatever threat they have. You can also banish the Dark Arm Dragon to copy its effects and pick apart their field. There are plenty of good uses for Phantom of Chaos. The only issue is its low attack points, so it loses the deck devastation virus. But with the rest of the deck being 1700 or higher, it's not really a concern. Similar to Cyber Valley in my Chaos Dragon deck, it's not really a concern if it loses to DDV, if the rest of your deck plays very well into it. There are plenty of other things you can utilize with Phantom of Chaos as well. Something like Gendora, the Dragon of Destruction, is also a card you can send off a Future Fusion and copy its effect with Phantom of Chaos. Also copy things like Bryanak or Goya Guardian from your extra deck, for example, to get a second usage out of them. To go along with the Dark package, I played 2 copies of Dark Greffer and a Plague Spreader Zombie. A Plague is quite obvious, it's a very good Dark monster that you can easily tutor from your deck with the Greffers and allow for various synchro plays. And the Dark Greffer I believe is much better than Armageddon Knight in this deck. While Armageddon Knight has some utility, being able to recur him back off of DDR or return from a different dimension to get a free usage out of his effect. That was far too niche in my playtesting, while opening the Dark Greffer allowed you to actually get into those plays to begin with. Seeing as Phantom of Chaos is a normal summon, it really helped being able to special summon Greffer from my hand. Even though it's a neg 1, to be able to do that play allowed me to do unfair things. I think that's why modern Yu-Gi-Oh feels so different than Edison, because in modern you open a hand of 5 cards, and each card can be played immediately, while in Edison format it's more like a mana-based system where you draw a bunch of cards that you can't really utilize in turn 1, at least in an effective manner. But Dark Greffer is one of those cards that you can immediately special summon. If your hand is filled with a bunch of dark monsters, you can put a lot of pressure out if you need to. And having that option really helps, which puts it over Armageddon Knight in my book. For the other warriors, I play 1 copy of Stratos, 2 copies of Malicious, and 1 copy of Plasma. There was also a point where I played Dasher and Destiny Draw in this deck. Whilst these 2 are very cool cards, they just weren't consistent enough, unfortunately. And since I'm not playing Miracle Fusion or anything that really requires me to have hero monsters in my deck, I can play as many or as few as I want. And I just felt this was the best ratio to have at least 2 different names you can search off of the Stratos. And the Plasma being a trade-in target and a good Phantom of Chaos target is why I included it. And the Malicious are really good with Plague Spreader Zombie, and allows you to make a particular level 7 synchro that is quite underutilized. Playing the Stratos also gives me an additional target to search off of reinforcement of the army. This way I can effectively play 3 copies of Dark Greffer, but the third one can also give me Stratos, which can get me Malicious or Plasma to use with the Greffer if I already have it. And since I'm not playing Cyber Valley in this deck, I wanted to have another starter card that I can summon turn 1 that just gets me out of the early game. And for the last monster in the deck, I play 1 copy of the Dark Creator. So the reason why I'm only playing 1 copy of the Dark Creator, when it's not really searchable outside the Dark Greffer, is because of what this card really represents. So yeah, it is 1 sole copy of the Dark Creator, so I'm not gonna hard draw this very often. But having the Dark Creator in my deck gave me an additional trade-in target, which boosted the consistency of trade-in slightly. It is also searchable off of Dark Greffer, so if I have a Phantom of Chaos and I want to copy its effect, I can readily do so. Additionally, I categorize this card as a bomb, meaning it's a card that requires some amount of setup, but when I can resolve it, it's very good. Other cards in my deck that also bombs are Dark Arm Dragon, my 3 copies of Red MD, and Return from a Different Dimension. So if you determine what the type of card is based on its effect and its usability, I'm not really playing 1 copy of the Dark Creator. I'm playing 6 bombs in my deck, one of which is in trap form and the rest are in monster form, and they all have different utility. Sure, the Red MD and the Dark Arm Dragon is more searchable than Creator, but I don't need to play 3 copies of the Dark Creator just because I consider it to be a good card, because then I would have 8 bombs in my deck. Sure, that would mean my deck is more explosive and can do more explosive things, but it would also mean that I would see a bunch of these cards in my hand early game, when they might just be dead. You can for sure play more copies of the Dark Creator in this deck, but doing so might mean that you want to play a 3rd copy of Dark Greffer, or perhaps play Level Eater, or Quick Draw Synchron, or more darks in general that just allows you to summon this more easily. Then for my battle Handtraps, I play 1 copy of Gorse, the Emissary of Darkness. It's not really a monster, it's more so akin to a trap card, but it is a high attack dark monster that you can technically banish off of Phantom of Chaos to copy its attack strength, or bring it back with the Dark Creator. For the draw cards, I play 3 copies of Upstart Goblin. It is very important you see Future Fusion as fast as possible and rest of your combo pieces, and giving your opponent 1000 life points is not that much of an issue. You can easily deal 10,000 damage or more across 2 turns. Then I play 3 copies of Trade-In. If you think about all the different ways to search a level 8 monster, you have plenty of targets in this deck. and 1 copy of Allure Darkness, a very easily activatable card seeing as your deck is primarily dark monsters. I decided not to play card destruction in this deck. While it is a very powerful card and allows me to discard things like Malicious or my dragons to the graveyard, it also speeds up the game. It lets my opponent see more cards and get some of their cards into the graveyard, freeing up cards like Vayu, Sirocco, making Blizzards live. And the whole point of this deck is you want to dig through your deck to see Gold Sarcophagus or Future Fusion. Particularly with Gold Sarc, you need to wait 2 turns. So speeding up the game with a card destruction does help your deck and increase your consistency, but I believe the benefit to my opponent is just as great. And playing that card in this kind of a deck is just giving your opponent a chance to sack you. While in something like Amaryllis, it's a lot better, because that deck puts your opponent on a clock way faster. And it's really a deck where you buy turns in the same way. So speeding up the game in Amaryllis is mostly in your favor. While in this deck, it can be pretty hit or miss. Then I play 3 copies of DDR. As this deck is very banish reliant, having a powerful Monster Reborn-esque effect is very strong. I also play 3 copies so I can search it off a Power Tool Dragon, because in the Chaos Dragon deck I was already testing 2 copies, so playing the third seemed like a no-brainer when I could easily tutor Power Tool Dragon with Malicious and a Whitestone. A card that I'm considering playing is Dimensional Alchemist in this deck. If I were to play 2 or 3 copies of D-Alch, it would boost my consistency of DDR and allow me to play Chaos Sorcerer, seeing as I have the Whitestone and Blue Eyes and 2 or 3 copies of D-Alch as my light monsters. Then I play 2 copies of Gold Sarcophagus, mainly to search the Future Fusion, but in a pinch you can also use Gold Sarcophagus to banish a high power boss monster and bring it back off of DDR. And Future Fusion is of course the best card in the deck. If you open this card, it is very rare that you lose the game, seeing as it just enables all the powerful pieces in your deck. For some of the searchers, I play 1 copy of Rhoda and 1 copy of E-Emergency Call. The Rhoda can of course search either Grepher or Stratos, so it's very versatile, while the E-Call is just for Stratos. So if you do open this and you see this later, it will be a dead card, but there are plenty of ways to utilize a blank card in your hand, either via discarding it or putting it to the top of your deck with Plague Spreader Zombie. When you have Plague and Mally in your graveyard, you can choose to put the card on top of your deck and either shuffle it or not, depending on whichever one of these you use first. So if you have a dead E-Call in your hand, you can just put this on the top of your deck and then shuffle your deck by using the Malicious effect. For the last spell in the main deck, I play 1 copy of Heavy Storm. I decided not to main deck MST for reasons I've talked about before. I don't believe it's a very good card in a format with draw traps, seeing as you don't want to use it under a blind back row. And you can usually push through most trap cards. I would only main deck MST if I see a large uptick in Royal Oppression in the main deck, but as of right now, it's not a card I want to main deck. And for traps, I play the 2 best purple cards in the game, Trap Dustchute and Return from a Different Dimension. For the extra deck, I play 1 copy of Armory Arm, 1 copy of Magical Android, 1 copy of Alavius the Scataster, 1 copy of Iron Chain Dragon. This actually comes up when you have Plague Spreader Zombie and a Grepher, so you can make a dragon to banish it for red MD. 1 copy of Bryanak, 1 copy of Goya Guardian, 1 copy of Power Tool Dragon. So Power Tool can be made with a Whitestone and a Malicious. This comes up more than you think, seeing as the Malicious is quite easily searchable, either via the Hero Package or Dark Grepher. And when you get to Future Fusion to dump a Whitestone, you can just recur this back off of the red MD. I don't feel the need to play more equipped spells than the 3 copies of DDR. Even if you were to draw one of the 3 DDRs, you don't need to go for the Power Tool Dragon, so there's no reason to play 4 copies of an equipped spell in case you draw one. Then I play 1 copy of Black Rose Dragon, 1 copy of Dark Game Dragon, 1 Thought Rule Archfiend, 1 Colossal Fighter, 1 Stardust Dragon, 1 Mistworm, 1 Chimeritic Fortress Dragon. Since Phantom of Chaos copies the name, you can copy a Cyber Dragon and Contact Fuse into Chimeritic, so it might be worth playing 2 copies of this in case there's an uptick in Machina. And for the last extra deck monster, I play 1 copy of 5-Headed Dragon to reveal off Future Fusion. For the side deck, I play 2 copies of DD Crow. It being a dark monster is also very good since it works so well with your strategy, and also being a hand trap, so you don't need to have a slow trap that you need to set a turn previously to activate it. This is a very fast paced deck, that's why I'm not playing cards like Mirror Force, Torrential or Bottomless. Since Royal Oppression and DDV might be more common post side, I decided to take out some of my special summon or DDV targets that are particularly weak for a more streamlined dragon deck. So I can side in 1 Infernal Dragon and 1 copy of Quakimator Drago. Infernal Dragon is a good target for DDV, and Drago is just very good against Blackwing and Vayu, particularly in those games where you get hit by Royal Oppression or a DDV. Then I have 2 copies of Cyber Dragon. This being a level 5 means that you can make Power Tool more easily with the Plague Spreader Zombie as well. 2 copies of Lightning Vortex. I really like this card against Amaryllis, seeing as you really want to push through their Titanial, and dealing with large established field can be quite troublesome at times. I sided 1 copy of MST to hit the Royal Oppression post side, and I'm also trying out 1 copy of Cold Wave. And playing Cold Wave, the turn after you use Future Fusion to dump a bunch of dragons to the graveyard, and you brought back a red MD from the Vibrant effect, you can go main phase 1, activate Cold Wave, and then freely do all of your plays with the red MD. And even if they were to draw into a torrential tribute, or they decided to hold it in their hand to set it the turn after Future Fusion to immediately torrential you on summon of the 5-headed dragon, seeing as it's a mandatory summon in the standby phase, they wouldn't be able to set it due to Cold Wave's restriction. Then I cite one copy of Eradicator. Since Red MD is a 2800 Dark Monster, you can easily copy this with Phantom of Chaos and tribute the Phantom with Eradicator before the end phase. Or you can just tribute this off for Eradicator to maybe call traps to get rid of cards like Royal Oppression or whichever trap cards your Blackwing or Bayou opponent may have. And then I cite 2 copies of Deck Devastation Virus. These virus traps are really strong, and the Dragon deck is for sure the best deck in Edison format to utilize them. And for the last 2 side deck cards, I have 2 copies of Royal Decree. If you enjoy my content, make sure to also subscribe to my second channel, linked in the description box down below. There I'll be posting more personalized and exclusive content.